Hello everybody, welcome to my RC plane channel. I'm James, and thanks for joining me on this build series where I'm going to be building this Balsa USA Stingray 120. I'm going to have all these videos on a playlist for reference. So my first video on this was my last one, which was the introduction to the actual kit itself. I opened up the box, I went over the parts and the plans and the instructions, just kind of give it a little bit of a review. And that was the introduction video to this build series. So in this video, I'm going to go ahead and start building. Okay, so to start with, I'm going to follow the instructions as much as possible, step by step. I don't plan on bouncing around or deviating if I don't have to. Now, based on my experience, and also either through personal preference or maybe I see something that I think I need to change a little bit just because I feel it needs to be that way, I may make a little modification, here or there. But overall, my intention is just to go ahead and follow this as close as possible. So the construction of the plane starts with the wing, and I starts with the left wing panel. Okay, so let's talk about the wing real quick before we start going on this. So the wing it's an 80-inch wingspan, and you build a left and a right wing panel, and then you join them in the middle and you glue them together. So at the end of the construction, you're just going to have one solid wing. It's not going to be a wing that you can take apart and plug into the fuselage. Okay. So if you look at my work area, you'll note that it's not real big. It's big enough for smaller planes, but with this plane, I'm going to have to go ahead and make some space. And the thing about it is, let's go ahead and check out the plans. So these are the fuselage plans here. Let me get this out of the way. Let me grab the wing plans here real quick. So these plan sheets, this is a single plan sheet and it's pretty big, and I showed you that during the introduction. It's a pretty big plan sheet. And here are the wings. Let me move this up here. Yeah, maybe you won't be able to see it too well, but you can kind of get the idea, right? So there's the right wing and the left wing. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to just cut the plans, and that's no big deal. That's pretty common. I'm going to cut the plans so I can work on each panel separately, and also so I can, when I get to the stabilizer and the elevator and all that type of stuff, I'm going to have this plan sheet is just basically going to be cut up so I can kind of accommodate it on my work area. Okay, so let me roll this up for now, and we'll come back and we'll cut the sheet. All right, so here's my work area, and it's pretty flat. I know it's pretty flat. I built this table. So before we get going though, when you're going to be building a kit, you want to make sure your table's nice and flat. That's not always easy to do. You want to get it as close as possible. So the best way to do that is to get a level, something like a level or something that has a straight edge on it like this. This one's kind of short. I'm just kind of showing you this as an example. But just go ahead and take the level and move it around on the table to see if you can see light through it between the table and the level itself. Makes sense, right? So if the table has like sunken area, obviously you'll see sort of like light coming through. If it's bowed, this will be able to rock back and forth. So you just want to go around and check to make sure your table is level as possible before you start building. Okay, so this is a hard surface, and I'm going to be building the plane on a building board. So let me grab that real quick. Okay, so my go-to building board is a 2-foot by 4-foot acoustic ceiling tile. You have right here. And these are relatively inexpensive, and you can get them, in a lot of your hardware stores and stuff. It's nice and flat. It's nice and clean. It's a fiber so that you can actually, push your pins into it. But it's pretty strong, to me, I just think this is the best. This is what I use, and I'll recommend it. You could use cardboard. There are other materials. Some people like to use just a piece of sheet metal, right? Like a piece of sheet metal with magnets to do it that way, to hold your pieces using magnets. I like using this and pins. Okay, so here's my building board. It's 2 feet by 4 feet. And then let me get my plan now, because I'm going to have to go ahead and cut out the wing section. Okay, so here are my plans. I'm actually going to take this building board off of here for now, and I'll just cut my plan straight onto this surface right here. Okay, so the instructions said the left wing first, but I'm going to go ahead and just cut off up to here. So you can kind of see here's where the wing panels end, and then I get into some other details here, but let me go ahead and cut this off of here. Let me get a... And this doesn't have to be anything like super straight or anything. All you're doing is just removing it. Okay, so I have some notes right here. I'm not going to cut through those, but I'm just going to go ahead and start here. And go around my little notes. Okay, there's that one. Now I will keep these next to me because there are details about the wing here. And we'll start right here. This is the right wing, so I'll set this one aside. Now I'm using the back side of this building board. This side has sort of the texture on it, or the little kind of the finish side, if you will. It's flat, it would be okay also, but I like using the back because it's more consistent. Okay, I'm going to move some stuff out of the way here. Oops, sorry, Wolfman. So now I'm just going to roll this out, kind of see where it ends up. Now I'm just going to go ahead and use some tape to hold it down. All right, there's our plan now, stuck to the building board. So now I'm going to put a cover over this to help protect it. So I've always used wax paper, and wax paper is fine. Parchment paper, you want something that's translucent, you can kind of see through the plans. And the reason you put something down on top of it is to protect the plans from getting, when you glue, you don't get the wood stuck to the actual plans themselves. And a lot of people have recommended, and I've seen people using just plastic, just plain old clear cling wrap. And I've never used this before. I've just used the, like I said, I've used the wax paper. But I'm going to go ahead and give it a go. I'm going to try out some of your suggestions. And I'm going to try just using the, go ahead and use this cling wrap. Let me get some of this out of here. And it can be finicky, right? Problem with wax paper that I've used is that wax paper, you can't tape it down very easily because it doesn't stick to anything. And I got a feeling I can probably tape this down. We'll see. I'm trying not to do is get it messed up as I do this. Okay. Just gonna slip a cutting board underneath it. That. And I'm going to use an X-Acto blade instead of tearing it. It's a little better, a little cleaner that way. All right, well, there you go. You can kind of see it was a little bit finicky when I was trying to get it on there. I just kind of wrapped it around the edges, and now my plans are protected. And hopefully, you know, if I put wood on here and I get a drip of CA or other glue on it, it won't stick to the plans. and it also won't stick to the plane, hopefully. Okay, so now we are ready to move on and start pulling parts and go to step 1 with putting the wing together. Alright, so I pulled out the wood pieces that I need for the first few steps to start the wing, and I did want to point out this. If you look at this big box of wood I have here, and there is a ton of wood in this thing, right? And all different sizes, different shapes, and all that. So you got to be really careful when you're looking at your instructions, when you're pulling out a piece of wood, to make sure it's the correct one. And you know, measure, check, double check before you grab and use any particular piece of wood, and just make sure. Now obviously something like this is just a 3/8 square piece of stock. I can get a replacement for that, but you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you don't cut the wrong pieces and such. So I already pulled out some of the pieces. Let me get this box out of the way and we'll keep moving here. So for the initial few steps, what I'm going to be doing is laying down the trailing edge sheet, this little piece right here, which goes on the trailing edge on the bottom. And then there's this little strip of material. This is an 1/8 by I think a 1/4 inch strip of balsa that goes along. It's glued along the back of the trailing edge like this. And then, well, one thing to note real quick is if you look at this, it's got a bow in it, and that's okay because this is a skinny piece of wood, so I think I can get it to form using T-pins. I don't think I have a problem with it. If it was a more critical or larger piece of wood that I couldn't get it to shape correctly, I would contact Balsa USA and see if they can send me a new piece, but I think I can deal with this. So anyhow, this is going to be the trailing edge on the lower portion of the wing. And then I'm going to block up the lower spar, which is a basswood material. The lower spar is going to go like right here. And then we block it up. We take this piece of material here. This is a 3/8 inch square piece of balsa. I'm going to cut it into small pieces, I think about 1 inch, 1.5 inches, and then we're going to block it up to raise it off the building board so that it fits properly. So yeah, and then the next thing is to pull out the ribs, which you see here, which are these laser cut guys. And the wing is a symmetrical airfoil, so there's no top or bottom, so that's nice. I can just pull these out and put them straight on. I don't have to worry about getting oriented correctly. So yeah, those are going to be the initial steps. So let's get going. All right, and also I wanted to mention that I'm going to be using T-pins to hold things down. I have a bunch of clamps, and I also have a variety of weights. I have these 1, 2, 3 blocks. These are machinist blocks. I'm going to get some more of these. These are heavy and they're square, and they're nice for setting things up in the right orientation and keeping things nice and straight. And I have some other weights over here and such. I think I'm going to purchase a few more weights for this build along the way, but that's kind of the basics. And then I'm going to be using this thin CA to start with, and then I'll be so essentially I'm going to use the thin CA to sort of set all of the joints and everything, get everything set up using thin CA, sort of like a tacking method for a lot of it, and then I'll come back with a thick CA or a medium CA and sort of reinforce all of my contacts. So that's going to be the general process of the build. So let me just set this aside for now. So this is the center of the wing, and what I'm going to do is, per the instructions, I'm just going to line up these pieces of wood along the center and kind of butt it up against here, and then it's going to overhang on the outward side of the wing. So I'm just going to put one of my blocks like right on that line, and that's just going to help keep it where it needs to be. Let me get this guy out of here, and then we'll go ahead and set a pin in there right in the middle, and then I'll just pin down the rest of it. And this strip actually has a little bit of a curve in it also, so I'm going to have to be careful here. And as long as there's not too big of a warp in the wood, you can basically get it all straightened out by just making sure everything's straight and pinned and secured while you glue it. Now the instructions say to use a thick CA to set this down, but because this piece was warped, I didn't want to try to monkey around. I know thick CA takes a little bit longer to cure and it gives you a little bit more time, but I wanted more time, so I just wanted to pin this down and just use a thin CA, and then I can go back later and hit it with a thicker. Okay, so these don't have to be perfect lengths. These are just going to be sort of like shims or little blocks to prop it up. So they're just approximately an inch and a half long. And I'll just go ahead and cut them with my little miter box here. Time for some ribs. So I think I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then there's 2 on the inner that are the inner ribs. So there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I should have 10 left. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay. So I want to be careful when I pull these out of the form here. I don't want them to split, so I'm just going to I'm going to take each one and I'm going to lay down a little piece of cutting board material, and I'm just going to go around and kind of just cut through these little, I don't know what you call them, little tabs or whatever that's holding the ribs in. I can push them out with my thumb and my fingers, but I just want to be careful. And like always, I save my scrap pieces. You never know when you need some pieces of wood for something. So I'll keep all my little pieces until I'm done with the build. Okay, there are our ribs. And the last thing I'm going to do before I start kind of getting these set up is I'm going to go over them. You can see there's these little, sort of these little burrs or kind of these little tabs left over from the laser cutting. And I'll just hit those real quick with a little sand block like this, and just kind of lightly. Probably not super critical because you can always hit it as when you get finished building the wing and kind of go over everything. But I'll just hit these real quick and just sort of knock off any little bumps on there. And then, you know, I want to be careful. I'm not going to hit this really hard. I don't want to distort the airfoil at all. I'm just hitting it really light, just like I said, just knocking off those little bumps. So now I'm ready to start setting the ribs, but there's something that I need to point out. So this is probably going to be like the first sort of quirky thing with the plane build. So the spar, the main spar, lower spar, in the instructions they say to pin it down. Don't pin through it, but just go ahead and put a pin to sort of clamp it and hold it down. and of course it's vertical, right? So, but if you put the, and then they tell you to, so put the rib on the spar, and then you butt it up against our trailing edge, this little strip that we stuck on here, and that's sort of your baseline for the wing construction. But you'll notice that if you hold the spar vertical, the trailing edge, or the back of the end of the rib, sticks up. No big deal. All that means is that when you put it down here, what happens is that rotates this main spar back a little bit, right? So when you do this, it just sort of rotates it back. So the main spar, the lower spar, is not going to be vertical. Okay? So if you pin this thing to be vertical, you're going to have a little bit of trouble. So what I'm going to do, and this is my take on it, this is what I'm seeing, I may be wrong, but if you're building this kit, check it out. But so what I'm going to do is I'm actually not going to pin my spar down just yet, or I may not even do so. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set these up by getting put all the ribs on the main spar, let the spar kind of rotate back to where it has to be, and then go back and sort of secure everything and then glue it, if that makes sense. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my longer T-pins and I'm going to go along that spar, and again it's tilted back now, as you can, hopefully you can kind of see that. It's actually tilted back, it's not vertical, but I am going to use the pins just to sort of secure it in place. I'm just going to go right up to it and just basically kind of almost like little cleats, I guess. I'm just going to push them down just to sort of hold them, and I'm going to push it back. I'm going to push the spar back so that the rib is butted up against this little strip right here, and that's going to be how I'm going to set it up. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and sort of secure that lower spar, and then once that's secure, I'm going to take my blocks or my squares. You can use a different, you can have something like this, but I'm going to use, because these are square, I'm going to use my line of sight, and I'm going to go ahead and just set each rib vertical up against the spar, and just be careful, and then kind of just glue it in place with the CA, and that should work hopefully. Now, as I've said, and if you've been watching my channel or checking up some of my builds, I'm never claimed to be an expert. I'm doing this the way I think I need to do it. There's many ways to skin a cat and different, so if you're watching this, just understand that you may come up with your own way and ideas for building kits. So anyhow, all right, let me go ahead and get moving on this. Okay, so each one of those pins is set now. They didn't mention it in the instructions. It probably was something they should probably add to that, but they should note that it does kind of, like I said, it sort of tweaks it off a vertical, and you have to sort of pin them in at an angle. So everything's set up. Every kit is different. Every manufacturer that I've ever built, there's always a little bit different way that they do things. So, in any case, I just wanted to point that out. Okay, so now the spar is essentially kind of pushing everything back up against these points here, like right here. And now what I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and I will use my blocks, and I'm going to carefully go to each one of these and make sure it's vertical and hit it with the CA. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the outside ones first, and then I'm going to do the middle, just so that I can, that's just the way I like to do it, just so that I can sort of frame it up sort of, I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to start on this side and kind of go all the way across it. And if I do sort of make a mistake, I don't want to carry that mistake all the way through if it's not perfectly square, if that makes sense. So I try to set this one up on the edge, this one over here on this side, and then hopefully that sort of sets the frame, if you will, and then I'll go through and I'll work my way back out. So that's just the way I like to do it. Once again, I'll be using my little 1, 2, 3 block, and it's really nice. I just kind of put it right down on top of the plan, and I just move it over until I get it lined up, like right there. And then I know that's vertical, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll glue it in here, and then I'll just adjust this up here and do the same thing. And I think that's the good way. I think that works pretty well. All right, here we go here. And now I'll set the front one. Okay, this one's now set in here, and I'm just going to carefully kind of hold it on the block and make sure the spar is up and touching in there. If I only had one more hand, that would be great. Now the thing about this is that you still have room to play with it. When you put the upper spar in, you can still adjust the ribs a little bit if they're not completely true, but I think this is the way I'm going to do it. So all of my ribs are now tacked in place and square as I can get them. And now I need to go back over it all with a thick CA. You may not be able to tell, but there's a lot of gaps. I can fit my knife blade into some of these gaps. So I'm going to fill those in with the thick CA now. But yeah, I think this worked out okay. Things are looking pretty good. And again, these are 1, 2, 3 blocks they're called. They're machinist blocks. And I don't know, you get them for 10, 15, 20 bucks for a set, and I'm finding that I really, really like these. These have become one of my main go-to tools for building RC planes. I highly recommend getting you some sets of those. Okay, if I didn't mention it, I just did a video on this, just a quick little video on the Starbond CA and kind of why I like them because of the applicators and such. But just in case you haven't seen that video, I am using Starbond. I'm using thin, medium, and thick, and I think it's a good glue. And I'll be using the thick. Here's my little applicator. I got to put this on here. But yeah, I just did a recent little video on that if you're interested. But in any case, I'm not going to get into all that right now. But so now I'm going to go ahead and hit it with this thick CA. This is sort of a gap filler. And then probably what I'll do is once I get it kind of, when everything's set, I'll take it off of the building board so that I can make sure that I get in some of these areas, because some of these are obviously vertical and they're going to drip down, so they may not completely fill some of the gaps, but I'll go over it again, just make sure I got complete coverage on both sides. Alright, now I'm ready to set the upper spar now. So same thing, I'm going to put my block back over here and I'm going to line it up with my lower spar. And then I'm going to set it in here. Pretty easy actually. Hopefully everything goes in here nicely. Carefully. There it goes. And now you can really see how those spars are not vertical, kind of going off of the, like I was mentioning before. So keep that in mind if you're going to be building this kit. The wing is just sort of built kind of tilting backward, right? All right, and to start off with, I'm going to set a block right up against this spar right back here. Maybe I'll put it on the outside, just to make sure that this spar is nice and vertical before I glue that the rib. I'm talking about setting the rib. Make sure, just once again, just check to make sure the rib is vertical before I set the spar on it. And I'll do this one, and then I'll come and I'll do this last one over here, and like I said, hopefully that sort of frames it, if you will, and then I'll go in the middle and I'll check it just to sort of do it that way. If you have any comments about that, or you think it's not necessary, you know, let me know, put it in the comments. And same procedure as last time. I'm going to hit it with the thin CA to tack it, and then come back with the thick CA and secure it. Now I'm ready to set the part of the leading edge. So the leading edge is two pieces. There's this 1/4 inch piece which goes up against the ribs like this, and then there's another piece that goes on that, which then it all gets shaped. Now the curious thing about this is that the instructions say find the 1/4 inch, the shaped 1/4 inch thick piece for the leading edge, which I think I have here. But if you look at it, you'll notice that it's only shaped on one side. Okay, they didn't shape it on this side, and I have two pieces like that, and I was a little bit confused. I wanted to make sure like these weren't the ailerons or something, and I had to look through the instructions to see, and I think I located the ailerons. The interesting thing about this, and I'll have to come back to it, but I can't find in the instructions where they actually talk about the ailerons, so that's going to be interesting. I may have just been overlooking it, and I will follow up on that. But in any case, so I think this is the leading edge sheet, and it's going to go up against the ribs like I said, and then it has to be trimmed to match. Okay, so I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just taping it in place to kind of get it up against the ribs, and then I'll go through and I'll pin it to make sure it's aligned, and then we'll glue it. The tape is just going to be here to tack it on. Hopefully it'll hold it. Okay, that'll work. In fact, I think if I can just use a couple pieces of tape just to sort of secure it, I don't have to use any really more than that. All right, that'll hold it right there. And now I can go ahead and pin it where I need it. So this should work if I'm careful. So I have the piece of material up against this block, and then I'm going to line up the top with the top of the rib, and then hopefully I can get this straight in here. It's a thick piece of wood. Okay, that's good. That'll work. And now I will do the same thing on this side. Okay. All right, then I'll go through all these other ones and get those pinned in and lined up. So that seemed to work pretty good. I will have to press these down as I glue them. So again, I'm going to use my thin CA and then come back with the thick CA. And yeah, that should work pretty good. All right, so everything has now been glued with the thin and the thick CA. And my next step is going to be to put the trailing edge sheet, just like this one, on the top. And then for this, I'm just going to use my thick CA again, and I think I'll have time now because this is all set for me. So I'll put my thick CA on all these contacts, and then I'll put this down and I will pin it down in place, and then that should be good. Time to carefully line it up. Now, again, the instructions say use a thick CA here, but you know, it dries a little slower than the thin, and sometimes you got to use a combo. I'm going to put some thin where the ribs are to make sure it tacks down better. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this video. And the next video coming up, we're going to be taking the wing off of here and cutting the angles at the ends for the dihedral, but then also moving on to build the second wing panel and such. But in any case, so we made a lot of progress in this video. I'm really happy how it's coming out, and that'll be it for now. Okay, so thanks for watching my channel. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.